Right, so hi everyone. Sad that we can't go out this afternoon, but the thermal camera was definitely tested in those conditions today. Bouncing around a lot, which is part of why I'm here. We want lots of different footage, so it's actually quite good for the camera, but just not good for everyone else on board. So as Lara mentioned, I'm working with the University of Plymouth. I'm doing a PhD over there. This isn't actually part of my PhD, but I've previously worked as a guide in various places and done a few other bits, so I was asked to step on a project and come and collect some footage. So who turns down 5 weeks in the Azores? Certainly not me, so that's why I'm here. So the idea is to test a thermal camera. So we installed one on the top of the vessel when I first got here. It actually went fairly smoothly, I thought, and yeah, seems to be holding on well, like I said, in all of those conditions. So why thermal cameras? Well, they can be used in variable weather. So say, you know, there was a thermal camera on a vessel that wasn't having lots of customers, you could send it off again this afternoon. It could be collecting that data even in those conditions. It works with through glare. It doesn't get impacted by glare. It can detect things at a further distance when it's working really well. It can also work in low light conditions, so you could install a camera that's going on a vessel at night time and it still be able to collect data. It can detect things in a very short period, so even with you know, really zippy animals or very small ones like a harbour porpoise, for example, it still do a really good job at detecting them, which we as people find very difficult with those smaller animals. And it helps with that kind of field work element. You know, it is always expensive. Yes, the initial camera at the moment is expensive, but once it's installed and doing its thing, it can continue just to collect footage and then be analysed afterwards. And it can be installed on vessels that don't naturally have an observer on board. So you could have big cargo ships that are crossing oceans with a thermal camera on board, collecting the data in open ocean where we don't get to very much. And so why the Azores? You guys all know this already, but is why it was pitched for this project is the incredible biodiversity that we've got here. So I've been doing this for 10 days now, and I've already recorded 7 species and seen 8, which I think is pretty good going. And yeah, encounters every day. And in diverse environmental conditions. It's been very apparent over my short time here. When I first got here, it was like my first day was absolutely glorious, like sea state 1 all day, and I was like, this is going to be great. And then for the last like 5 days, it's been trying to combat seasickness and getting through that. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. But particularly why with Futurismo, it's that strong research heritage, years and years of experience doing this kind of thing, having trained observers on boards, having guides to be able to help that are really experienced, and having that consistent survey effort as well. So before we look into the camera that we're using and the techniques that we're using for this particular project, I just thought I'd sort of talk you through a little bit about how thermal cameras work. So unlike a normal camera that uses sort of visual light that's bounced back off an object, thermal cameras use infrared radiation or heat energy, which is emitted from everything all around us. So anything with a temperature of above absolute 0 will emit infrared radiation. And the amount of infrared radiation depends on how hot or how high that temperature is. So the camera that we're using, the FLIR camera, is particularly good for what we're doing out there at the moment. It's made for marine environments, which is really important. It's got really strong marine housing. It can, you know, it can get wet. It can roll about. One of the really good things for this camera is it's got a 2-axis gyro stabilization system, so it can sort of deal with the rocks and the rolls of the boat. It also can spin 360 degrees round and also tilt up and down as well, so you get a really good sort of field of view of what's going on. It's also got an uncooled microbolometer, which is basically thousands and thousands of tiny pixels that process that infrared radiation. So it detects the thermal temperature of every single pixel and then creates a thermal map or an image that we can use, because that's, even when we're talking about things like acoustics and this kind of thermal energy, we're visual animals. We need to be able to see. So it's basically converting that thermal energy into the visual so that we can analyze it. It has really sensitive temperature gauge called an NETD. So it has an NETD of 50, I'll have to double check what the actual measurement is. 50 millikelvins, but that basically means that it can detect any temperature above 0.05 or any difference. So which is a really, really, really low sensitivity, which is important for when you're looking at marine animals, because depending on the conditions that you're in, the temperature of the back of a cetacean could maybe not be that different from the sea surface temperature. If you're working in really warm seas, that temperature gets less and less and less, so you do need that sensitivity there. It's also got a really high frame rate. So like I was saying before about those really short surfaces sequences, it can pick that up really, really quickly, and has high resolution as well. So that's the camera that's installed on the top of the boat if anyone wants to go and have a look at where it's perched. So why is this good for marine mammals? Well, one of the best things thermal cameras are used for is for the bigger whales and the blows, because it can actually use the blow height, the direction, like sperm whales is perfect for it, to differentiate between species, and the blows are really warm, so they come up really well on the thermal camera. Obviously you get that surfacing. The heat is really well retained as they surface because of the wetness on their skin as well, which is something I didn't realize until I got here, which is really cool. And they're warm animals, so that temperature difference does show up really, really well. So what's unique to this project is that camera has a thermal camera, but also a visual camera as well. And it's the synchronization between these two modalities that will underpin the model, and why it's really important. Because with the thermal camera, you get the heat signatures of the animals and the detection rates, and then with the visual side of things, you get the species and then the behavior of those animals as well, which is kind of what I'm underpinning and what you guys are helping me underpin as well. I keep asking you guys, like, how many did you see? What species was it? What behavior? That kind of thing. I'm noting all of that down as well. And they're synchronized together at exactly the same time, so that can be put into an AI detection model. And then that can then be built into a classification model, so that eventually this camera with the visual and the thermal can be put onto vessels, and it wouldn't need me to be necessarily on the boat. So yeah, for those larger vessels, like I was talking before, like cargo ships and things like that, that we will never be able to get on board, it's going to be really good for that kind of thing. So unfortunately, the really cool, everyone that's been on the boat has seen like the really cool, colourful images. They're stored in a format that I wasn't able to convert quick enough for this afternoon. So we've got some that are in sort of this grey scale, but I thought I'd show you a couple of instances of what I've been collecting. So like I said before, I want footage of everything and anything that we can see out to sea, and sea state is one of them. So this was it's not playing. This was the first day when it was lovely, and it was sea state 1, and I chose this video particularly just to show you how much the birds show up as well. And the numbers, because I actually think birds is one of the most difficult things to count at sea, to get the numbers of how many, when you've got massive rafts like that. So if you had a thermal camera that could take a snapshot of that raft, you could very easily get a super accurate number of the birds. So that's been really nice discovery of how well they show up. And then just vessels. also pop up really, really, really far away actually. I've been going back and forth and using the chart plotter to see how far away the vessels are when the thermal camera picks them up on the horizon, and sometimes it's sort of over 3 nautical miles away. So it's pretty good. And then the more exciting stuff. So this was a pod of commons with excitingly striped that came in the background behind it. So what would be really cool when we're trying to think about differentiating between dolphin species, which I think is going to be one of the hardest things that the thermal camera is going to be, have to deal with. This was an amazing video because I could literally say common dolphins in the foreground and striped dolphins in the background. What can the model do? Let's see if it can actually detect the differences. And then this next one this is how it usually looks, because this was just recorded on my iPhone, because it was the first cetacean that we saw on it, so I was sending it to everyone because I was really excited. So I downloaded this from WhatsApp, but this is 2 sperm whales that we saw, and you can see how bright the body is picked up when it's in that colour scale, and how well the blow's picked up, so how bushy and the 45 degrees and everything that it can see in the camera there. Sperm whales are my favourite because they're super easy, because they just chill out and stay there. The sei whales are much, much more difficult to film. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of how thermal energy and imaging works, and the particular camera that we're developing for this project, but just sort of the future implications of this kind of research. So, if we were able to develop this technology and put this camera on different ships, we could really gain so much data from areas that we never get to go to. So you could use it for environmental impact assessments. That's one of the things the project's looking into mostly. So yeah, you've got that large scale sort of data collection methods. Other sort of projects alongside this one are looking at vessel strike mitigation. I previously worked on a project that was using it in the Canary Islands for sperm whales over there, because ship strikes are a really big problem with their fast ferries. So they're looking at a system of having a thermal imaging camera with an AI model that, if they thought it saw a blow, would alert the skipper through a text message that there's sperm whales in the area. So there'd be sort of a mandatory speed down system if you got that text alert in that area. So I think that could be really, really cool. That could be used again on massive cargo ships if they're going through shipping channels, for example, the blue whale area in Sri Lanka and things like that as well. And yeah, loads of other things that keep popping up into my mind actually as we're collecting this data and looking at it. It's all very exciting. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, they're Azorian bottlenose.